Changes around us every day. So, how do you manage the changes that happen in mining year round? Welcome to another episode of Change Itself, hosted by Gus Miner and Eric Demers. The show is brought to you by Sofvie and Technica Mining and is produced by Crownsmen Partners. Here are your hosts, Gus and Eric.
All right, good day, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Change Itself once again. We're here with episode 11 today, and we're pretty excited to bring in some new conversations, Eric and I, with things that are happening in our environments and how we're able to learn, more specifically, learn from a lot of the great guests that we've had on our show up until now. And we look forward to bringing a lot more guests in the coming episodes to keep expanding. But we thought it would be a great time to have a recap and discuss about some of the things that we've implemented and talked about with past guests. So here we are, Eric Demers. How's things going?
Good, thanks. Flying solo. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's kind of different without having someone else to introduce and talk about and kind of drill them for all the answers. I mean, we're on the spot today.
So maybe we start with last episode we had Dr. Shapiro in, and we were talking about analytics and visualizations and dashboarding, that kind of stuff. I know just before this, I sent you a picture of some stuff I was whiteboarding with Pat, our data analyst here, around some dashboarding to make the supervisor's life easier. You tried anything or done anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, since our last talk with Dr. Shapiro, there's a lot of things that I actually brought back to our team. And you said, you know what? And we've been kind of diving into a lot of different things. And more specifically, a lot of the work that we do has a lot to do with what our clients or users are asking for. So it's been relatively kind of, busy on that front to be able to just keep supplying on demand. But then there's a very, very huge opportunity to actually start discussing, like, how do you leverage the information that you have in a way that you've never maybe considered, or how do we answer the questions that are coming in from our clients or users in a different fashion than they were asking for, but that offer even more value, right? So it's been extremely interesting, the conversations we've had from there. It was I would say that we learned a lot from that episode and from our conversations with Dr. Shapiro. And I'm super interested. I mean, what do you guys have been up to? And I know we've had a sneak peek with some of the dashboarding, but how does that affected your world?
It's been awesome. And so we started, like, one of the big things from Dr. Shapiro was really the baby steps. And I mean, he was looking for tomatoes. And so just baby steps. So first we started with we built a dashboard around what we call the FIP, which is our Fatality Injury Prevention Plan. So every year we create one of these plans and we set out metrics and goals for ourselves, and then we track ourselves against it. And for the better part of last year, project managers would go in, they would go collect all this data, put it together, spend maybe a couple hours a month at the end of the month compiling this to be able to present it in a manager's meeting. And so the first thing that we did coming out of that episode was, we have that data available? It's the same report all the time. How do we dashboard that? And so we did that and made it to be able to drill in, which allows the project manager now to use a dashboard. We're using Power BI, and you can actually drill in and get some actionable information and data. And so it's the same information that's coming from a bunch of different sources. It's in one place where it makes sense for the project manager. So we're getting value that way. It's allowing us to audit some of the key processes that we have. And so that's where we started. We went down the road of incident management, and just looking at how good we're doing for investigations and things what are we looking at, what are we not looking at. And then the popcorn moment this morning, as I was meeting with our data analyst, was around the supervisor. So the supervisor currently, they're using, I don't know, they're probably touching 30, 40 forms that are submitted per day. And then they're like deciphering that and reviewing it and taking actions all over the place and then compiling it into one report. And so what we were talking about this morning is, how do we go collect that and put it in one place so that they're not having to have 10 screens open and different reports, and make it really easy and visual for them. So that's what we're working on this morning through Power BI. It's like, how do we create that dashboard that's going to take that, hour or two at the end of the day where you're compiling everything and you're reviewing things into one place where it's very easy and actionable. That's what we got out of it.
No, that's great. And that's great. And how's the feedback been so far? Like how are the, because like when you think about things from a change management perspective, anytime you commit any kind of change, there's going to be some form of positive or negative feedback from it. How has that change been, or that adaptation been received so far from the team with seeing those things?
It's still fairly new, so as expected, we're still like talking about it. We're going to present it again today, this afternoon. We're going to review it together. There's some questioning around, well, is this data right or not? And then you got to go back and verify, like, are there actually issues with what we built? And then no, if the report works a certain way. In this case, we have like sites assigned to people, and so it's compiling back our target report to know whether the site's compliant or not, or meeting their minimum compliance. Well, it's based on the site that we're using the site that they're doing more work at, as opposed to the site assigned to them in our ERP. So right. There's some discrepancies there, but as you start to get to learn it and people are seeing it, and they also need to discover the value for themselves. So I think like we're just starting, we're just scratching the surface. So I think as more and more is seen and more is possible, I really see it like taking off. And I really think once we get this tool built around the dashboard for a supervisor to be able to help improve the work, that's going to then be something that's going to gain momentum, because it's something they're going to use and touch every single day.
Well, that's great. I mean, because some of the questions that come across our side is, as we start to try to make, so whenever you're trying to make things more efficient, there's a number of people that thank you, right, for making it more efficient for me.
Yeah.
Some of them, they almost feel like there's a possible threat for their position or their job, because now you're eliminating all these things that they don't have to do anymore. And then sometimes, you also get another leg of it, which is, well, I don't trust the output that I didn't deliver myself, right? Without really necessarily realizing that they already did deliver it themselves. It's just that we're not getting them to do rework.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, we've had a lot of conversations about, we are trying to give you back some of your time. We're trying to find a way that you can buy back time, so that you can do the things that are the most valuable to you and your organizations and your team, which most of the time has a lot more things to do with leadership and conversation, rather than sitting there and compiling information into a report.
Yeah.
Have you had any of that kind of feedback, or is it being pretty receptive as far as like, I think we're going down the right path as far as giving us a good source of truth and buying back some of our time?
I think what I'm seeing and experiencing so far, it's more the buying back the time, and that we're getting to look at it, but it's getting used to doing something differently again. So that's going to take time. And my guess is we're going to look at probably 3 months worth of like continuous repeating, and not repeating as in like just re-showing, demonstrating, showing value coming out of it, before it's going to gain that traction where it's just self-sustaining. It's part of what we do. That's kind of been the experience so far. The cool part, the one you haven't really touched on, and I know that you and I, as we work together, this keeps happening, is you roll out a feature or we roll out a report, and then it spurs the idea for the multiple and the different reports. And I find that interesting, because here's how I do it, or here's the report that I have, and then it sparks an idea in someone, and then sometimes it's completely off, we call it left field, but it's really great. We're seeing some really good stuff happen. So that's my prediction on where these analytics are going. Right now, we're doing it with the health and safety and training and risk management and incidents and that kind of stuff. But I really see the potential, and I see it taking off in like project reporting and costs and finances, and just, to me, the business and how it operates overall, not just in the realm of health and safety, but overall how we're performing.
Right. I mean, it's a super interesting phenomenon, right? Because we always talk about this, and I know I've brought it up to you many times, where every feature drives 3 more features.
Yeah.
And depending who you talk to, it's a very good thing and or a very bad thing, depending on where you're sitting on the spectrum of delivering that result, right? But the way that I've always seen it is that if you get to the point where there's a very solid and continuing ask for more things, or you deliver one result and then you want 3 more results that are very similar but in a different format. One is they're now engaged, right?
Yeah.
2, they're now starting to understand what's possible, because until you develop that feature or that dashboard or that report, they probably didn't even know that you can have this information available in this way, or that this information was available at all, right? So I always took it as a very huge compliment, right? Or it's if we deliver something of value and then they're asking for 3 more, one, they're not rejecting what they're not rejecting what we proposed. 2, they're very, very engaged into the value that it brings to the table. And now we're actually future-proofing what we're trying to accomplish by having direct feedback and direct input from people that we're trying to buy time back for. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. And like I said, depending where you sit on the spectrum of delivering those results, it can be seen either way, but I see it as a very, very positive thing. So it's very exciting to see that feedback, right? That it's nice that I have this information. Can you get this information? Is this available? And then it starts getting the creative wheel moving, right?
And oftentimes it is like it's already there and it's okay, or sometimes it's not, but it's like, okay, well, how do we again go back to the tomato example? It's like, what are we doing that's similar, that's an indication of that we can go look for and do? And be surprised at how much data and information we already have and collect that gives us like tangible results. I was astonished. Start combining the work we're doing in Sofvie and the work with we're using Viewpoint as our ERP. Like as those things start to combine, it is pretty incredible the reports and the dashboards and the things you can come up with.
Yeah, and I think what happens as well is the more that we're able to offer that kind of value or that kind of feedback to people and into group settings, is that one of the things that's been very, very hot in the discussions on our side as well, and things that I've been having discussion. One of the big discussion points that I've had with many people in the past couple of months, especially with the ever changing world that we're living in today, is that we are 100% a product of the 1%, right? So, and the reason why I say it that way is that.
What do you mean by that, Gus?
So what I'm saying is that like you perform. So we talked about the 3 laws of performance, and then you perform based on how the world occurs to you.
Yep.
And it's also how you make decisions, and it's also how you take a stance on anything, or it's just how you perform, right? Based on how the world occurs to you. So if we take on it if we take on it as a context of, for example, like a help desk technician, right? Well, you ask a help desk technician, what is the best system out there to use, or what's the best computer, or what's the best cell phone, or anything else like that, they're likely going to tell you that they're probably all not good, because they're subjected, like 100% of their life revolves around the 1%, which is the people calling in with issues with their device. Meanwhile, there's 99% of the devices out there that are actually performing quite well, right? And it's the same thing, like, if you look at even in a hospital setting, right? If you ask the hospital how things are going, well, they're at full capacity, there's things going on, like they're completely overwhelmed by the 1% that's coming in. But in reality, it's very, very hard to reassure yourself and to remind yourself that as soon as you step outside the hospital, that there's 99% of the world out there that's actually doing okay. So that's why I offer that context of like 100% of your environment is based on your 1% of exposure that you've put yourself into, like the bracket that you put yourself into. So a lot of times with data, or a lot of times with information, is that you will likely surround yourself with the same information because you're leveraging the same tools that you've leaned on and learned, and you basically rinse and repeat your cycles, right? So a lot of your decision making processes and a lot of how you see the world occurs through that lens that you've basically created for yourself to, as a stable place to be. But once you get exposed to other systems, other information, or other possibilities, now all of a sudden you're kind of disrupting that world. And it's not necessarily a negative disruption, is that you're able to see a lot more context, you're able to see a lot more opportunity. And then you kind of like recalibrate what your goalposts are, because you're just having more tools available to you, right? Like, have you like, is this making sense in any way, or have you been able to see that happening the more that you've been opening the doors? Have you seen some behavioral or some performance-based changes, or even conversations changing because now that their reality has now been expanded a little bit?
Yeah, I think to come back to that piece around the one feature drives three features, I think that's kind of what's at play, is that like you're seeing things you otherwise wouldn't have seen as possible. So you're like, oh, well, what about this? And then that idea sparks another idea, and it's disruptive, not in a bad sense. It's disruptive. Like you're completely transforming what was, normal before. And so, yeah, I totally see it. I see it with features. I see it with even as you might investigate an incident or something, and you now see the world differently. You get to look back on a situation and see, oh, this could occur. Okay, well, I didn't know or didn't consider the possibility of that happening. So now that I know, what am I going to put in place, or how do we protect against that? And yeah, I definitely start to see it.
Every worker deserves to go home safely at the end of the day. Book a demo with Sofvie to discover how their groundbreaking EHS management software empowers workers to proactively avoid hazards, and how organizations like yours can cultivate a stronger work culture. To learn more, you can visit them at sofvie.com. Technica Mining is a premier underground mining and construction contractor. They stand for delivering quality project work on time and on budget through innovative thinking. Their excellent safety record, experienced workforce, and large equipment fleet will guarantee the timely completion of all your project needs. Trusted by the world's leading mining companies, Technica Mining has over 20 years of experience in mine construction, development, and production. Contact Technica Mining to take your next mining project to the next level. Visit them at technicamining.com. Change Itself is produced by Crownsmen, the voice of industry. Check out more, including The Crownsman Show, Mining Now, Crownsman Energy, and Crownsman Egg at crownsman.com.
And it just creates such an awesome conversation when you think about it, because then you get that out of box kind of thing. Because I find sometimes even like what I like is the most skeptical, right? Because they're very, very comfortable where they are, and then you show what's possible. And they're like, well, if this is possible, why don't you try this? And you think that it's a very off-rooted, impossible realm of availability as far as the request goes. And then sometimes you can turn that around in a couple of minutes or a couple of weeks. And then like you said, it completely disrupts their view on things, because they just threw you this completely absurd idea and it became a reality. That engagement that you get on that point is just phenomenal. The naysayers from the beginning become your front runners in a very short amount of time and lead their way through, right?
Yeah. And to your point around like the self, fulfilling, at some point, sometimes it goes the wrong way and it's negative, and you've self-fulfilled, like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes. And an example of that is just talking with Jake Hughes, who we had on a couple months ago. This was on Friday, and we were talking about, a little bit of wanting to disrupt, and how do we inspire people to see safety differently within our organization and the industry for that matter. And until we get it to, again, use back a sentence used earlier, occur to people such that everybody's inspired. Like everybody goes to work because they want to, nobody goes to work to get hurt, right? And so if we can all look at it from that perspective, like how do we create that perspective? So Jake shared, he's like, oh, I got this, this link that I like to see from Corey Pitzer, and it was a really interesting conference where he talks about 7 delusions of safety. And it's not saying that any one of them are bad, or that you shouldn't never do these things. It was just showing that sometimes we tell ourselves a good story and we believe it, and then it leads us into the wrong direction. And it's not because anybody's like, intentionally being negligent or not doing things. It's just like we keep telling ourselves everything's good. We're looking at these same metrics and they're never changing. And then all of a sudden, bam, something serious happens. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting from that.
No, it's great. And I mean, when, like, a lot of the times I've been having these conversations as well, where, I mean, change management is just scary, right? So whether it's something that you're trying to put in that's very, very small that ends up being a big project because of the insertion point, or whether it's something very big and it becomes a big project because it's just something big, there's always that concern about how is it going to be received? How do I push this through? How do I make sure that we're successful with this? How does it get rejected, that we have to return back the time? And I mean, we've had a lot of those occurrences over the past little while about, like, once we put something in place, we have to just keep moving forward. Like, it's very, very difficult to say, let's go back in time and then reverse the clock, because that's actually even more detrimental to what you're trying to achieve than not.
Yeah.
So, like, we've had conversations with some users that have taken significant more time to do the basic things that we would see in our progress. But it's okay. And we keep reassuring people, it's okay if it takes a little bit more time, right? It's okay that you're not, rushing through it or having knee-jerk reactions to the objections. Let those objections come through, kind of work your way through them. And then as you work through them, then eventually you get that enrollment and that buy-in that you're looking for. And then you can see the win. So I had an interesting conversation with one of our clients where it was a bit of a challenge, right? Like, it was a bit of a challenge to get set up. It took months and months and months, and there was also some buy-in because of all the other change management that's going on in the organization. And then finally, they had a very small window of opportunity where there was some time that got liberated because one of the initiatives got dropped off or whatnot. So they invested time into it, and then they saw the output. And to get that call, right, to say that, oh my God, what it used to take me days is now taking me seconds, and I cannot believe that we've achieved this point. And it was almost like that tipping point for them. And now the systems have like exponentially changed and been endorsed over a short amount of time. So I think it comes back to kind of the conversation that we had with one of our guests, where it doesn't necessarily matter sometimes when that moment occurs. It's just important to acknowledge that there will be a moment where that occurs, and then you got to be ready to then challenge it, right? The same way as the one feature drives the 3 features.
If you think back to our conversation with Charles, and we were talking about transformational change, and we were exploring, like, what is transformational change? And then Charles mentioned that it was all relative, and it's so true. Like, these big, massive changes take a long time, and when you stand back and you look at it, yeah, it was transformational. It took a really long time, and in the moment, it's like, sometimes, yeah, there's some tough times where you're slugging through it, but it's a bunch of those small pieces that end up building, and then you end up with that one point where you can stand back and see the progress and look back at that change initiative and really see the difference that it's made.
Yeah, no, for sure. And you got to remember to celebrate those small victories as well, right? I had that conversation with one of our clients. I said, you know what, at the beginning, because it was a very resistant group, I said, gauge how things are going to go based on their ability to just sign in. Just let's see how the sign-in process is going to go.
Yeah.
And that's checkpoint number 1. They're like, really? That's so small. I said, no. Just, are they all signing in? And then she's like, oh, about 95% signed in. They're signed in and then they're in. So they're just waiting for the next queue. perfect. Celebrate that, because that is a victory. They know where to go. They were able to sign in. They acknowledge their information. Now you're primed for the next step. And I find that it's so crucial to celebrate those small wins in the same way that you talk about with those dashboards or those reports. Being able to say like, hey, we're actually, even if sometimes the whole thing is not as a whole a hit, but there's a piece in it that is victory, right? And then duplicate that piece, or bring the energy to that piece brought forward, and just keep working on that. So it's just really interesting when we start, and especially like we talked about, as we've been learning from our guests, like I try to implement at least one thing, or try one thing that I've learned from every single guest that we've had. And I mean, now that we're on an episode 11, there's at least 10 things that that I've tried. And it's been really interesting how it's received. And for the most part, it's been really, really positive, right? Really positive. Sometimes it shakes things up for a little bit. There's a little bit of like discontent, because it kind of like moves the soil around a little bit that they're standing on. But then it just, you get exponential growth and results from it. So it's been really interesting.
Awesome. I think the one that I'll take away from this and from this conversation is really that celebrate the small wins, because sometimes I find that one, you're in it and you don't see it, you don't take the time to acknowledge it. So definitely be trying that out. Have you checked out any cool technology lately?
Yeah, so we've been, we're always diving into new things. And something that's come to light with us is, without letting too many cats out of the bag kind of thing of what we're working on, but we've been really exploring the natural voice activation features that are available, because some of them are very prescriptive, right? Where if you don't give it that specific command, it doesn't get to the next stage. So we've been working with a company that's really going to help us out from an AI model to be able to accept natural voice, so that we can evolve into different devices, into glasses, into pens, or whatever. You can use different digital devices to do your work. But that's been really interesting on how it actually works, and how you can actually completely change the format of what you're doing, because now you're doing things over voice, and you can actually have some response back. So some of the most mundane activities now, I can start seeing them as being very, very interactive, not necessarily, in a way of like interactive with other people, but that you're actually interacting with the tools that you're using to achieve the goal. So it's been really cool to see how that's been progressing, and how we're going to include that in a lot of our offerings. So that, I also saw a point where, just like, Google has just the one field in the center, and it just says, hey, tell me your first step, and then I'll let you know what the other steps are. There's almost like, that possibility now, where with voice activation and also like geolocation, that you can actually ask that for, just answer that first question, and then all of a sudden your world expands and you just start diving into that. So
that's cool.
That's been really exciting for us anyways, and for me, as far as what the future looks like in the field.
There was this one company and the product that I sat in on a presentation of. I thought it was quite really, really cool. It was a new type of sensor. I won't get too far into what it does and how it works, but yeah, basically this sensor, and it was presented in like an electrical kind of, like, not capacity, but a way to monitor signals from an electrical cable. And as I was sitting in that demo and just seeing what was possible, like the different ideas that started to come out of the things that you could measure just through, whether it was temperature or all the different things, like they're using it in this case for electrical monitoring, but you could monitor anything that had temperature, whether it was like mine ventilation or equipment running or not. And it was kind of combining that like piece from Dr. Shapiro and like just like seeing a new technology and seeing, what it's capable of doing now and how we would apply it in the environment in which I'm more familiar. And like it was like mind blowing. It was like, how do we like start? And sometimes maybe a little bit, too far ahead and you got to like reel it back and you got to start small. But that one was a really cool sensor.
They brought you to feature that made you think about 3 more features.
Oh, there's more than 3 more features. This is cool. Like it was really, really, really interesting. Maybe a future guest for the show.
Yeah, you know, we'd be happy to have him on. I'm sure. I mean, there's a lot of really, really great innovations being born all the time, and like you, that you know, there's so much of it that comes across my desk, and you know, seeing how we can actually you know, have it fit within our scope or just be aware of it so that we can recommend it to others. A lot of great things happening. Well, right on, Eric. Well, hey, we episode 11, here we are, and this is one that we chose to do ourselves, which is a little bit off pace. But we look forward to connecting with our next guest next month.
Right on. Well, thanks a lot, Gus.
Right on. And for everybody watching, don't forget changeitself.com to get access to our YouTube channel. You know, subscribe, ring a bell, comment, like what's going on. We're also available on LinkedIn. If you look up Change Itself on LinkedIn, we'd be glad to have you follow along our journey and comment on our posts and on our episodes. And until next time, keep things moving forward.
Right on. Thank you. See you later.